And welcome back. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg says Facebook and Instagram are indefinitely blocking outgoing US President Donald Trump from using their online services. In a statement, Zuckerberg says the suspension of the accounts will be for at least the next 2 weeks until a peaceful transition of power is complete. The president's social media accounts include Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. They were suspended during the mob attack on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Now to talk to us more about this unprecedented decision that has been taken, we are joined via Zoom by SABC's network anchor and journalism lecturer from the Durban University of Technology, Siphumelele Zondi. Good afternoon and welcome to this new year. First time speaking to you in the new year, and welcome to the show. We speak on a very controversial aspect, and that is also around freedom of speech.
Well, Twitter only temporarily blocked Trump. His account has now been unblocked because they did say that this was because he was tweeting misinformation about him losing that American presidential election and the fact that he's going to have to leave office in about 2 weeks' time. Facebook has done the same. They said they are doing this until he leaves office. So when he got back to Twitter, which he did yesterday, which was Thursday, he then tweeted a video saying that there will be transition and that Joe Biden will be taking over. So acknowledging what we've known all along, really, that Joe Biden will be taking over as American president after him. This was obviously after those protests on Capitol Hill when pro-Trump supporters decided to storm Capitol Hill as they were saying that they are refusing to accept that Donald Trump will no longer be president of the United States of America come 2 weeks' time.
And then Facebook then also came out with Mark Zuckerberg then announcing that they will be suspending his accounts on Facebook as well as Instagram.
Definitely. This will be happening until he is no longer American president. So they're not doing it. I see a lot of reporters saying indefinitely. It's until he is no longer American president. And this is actually happening now that Democrats have taken control of a Senate as well, which is quite interesting because we know that there's been this dance, if you will, that social media networks in America have done with Donald Trump over the last year. It started with them flagging certain posts and then having links to correct information about whatever misinformation he would have tweeted. And at times they would then take down posts on certain occasions. But now that the Democrats have taken control of Senate, I guess it was an opportune time for them to then just block him from social media networks, because then lawmakers in America can't come back and say, well, you are mishandling our man, if you will.
What I find interesting with this decision, specifically looking at Facebook, is that Mark Zuckerberg then testifying in front of Congress, and there were issues, right, in terms of the data that Facebook is using, and including all other social media platforms. And the argument has also been that the likes of Cambridge Analytica, for instance, that those are the type of companies that you can point to and say that they also had a direct involvement that would have led to the successful election of Donald Trump.
Oh, totally. Because we do know that it was controversial, and the social media networks, where especially Facebook, were largely pointed at when it came to the election of Donald Trump, and how certain algorithms that were used by advertisers, how information ended up with Cambridge Analytica, as you say, and there's even accusations of the Russian involvement, and all of that pointing at Facebook to say, well, you should have done better. And when it comes to this information and comes to sharing of information with other platforms, 4 years ago, actually, Facebook did say that they were going to be more vigilant of where information that comes out of its platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's WhatsApp, doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Because when those things happen, it can have dire consequences, or it can have massive.
Siphumelele, you can just quickly conclude that point, and there's something else that I'd like to raise with you.
Well, I was saying that it does seem like they are probably trying to correct, maybe also because we do know that there are big companies who have profits to make, to correct what people said were wrong 4 years ago when Donald Trump ended up being president, because they say that algorithm can play with people's emotions to vote and think in a particular way.
Well, so here is it for me, is that at the core of media is the flow of information from one point to the next point. And we've seen that it almost feels as though social media has usurped the power that mainstream media has, in that someone like Donald Trump, for instance, would have direct access to his constituency. And even if you look at Donald Trump's campaign, he'd say that, listen, I didn't have to use the millions and millions that the likes of Hillary Clinton used to campaign for these elections, but solely using his social media platform. And I wonder whether the battle on the 21st century, when it comes to media, would be the battle over social media, specifically because of the power that they hold. And just look at this decision that has been taken by Facebook as well as Twitter.
Definitely, because social media now plays a critical role in how people think and the flow of information. For example, like, look at the huge amounts of misinformation that people are buying into, especially when it comes to, for example, 5G and its impact on COVID-19, for example. And a lot of it is misinformation, and it's being spread, and people are believing it because I suppose people gravitate towards boom when it comes to social media, as we've always said with traditional media, that if it bleeds, it leads. People always go for stuff that's going to cause hysteria. But yes, you are right that social media plays a critical role as well, but it also hasn't taken over traditional media, because that's also what we realized, especially with Donald Trump tweeting misinformation over the last year as he was campaigning to be re-elected as American president. Because what we realized then is that then the role of traditional media is to verify, fact check, and point viewers and audiences to the right direction and the right information to correct those wrongs. So it's always going to be a tricky balance of how you use social media, as well as what you take from traditional media as well. But the role of traditional media is even that much more important now than it was before, because of so much free flow of false information.
So freedom of speech is one of those fundamental rights that we all enjoy. And this is something that's also celebrated in the United States. And I wonder whether this decision that has been taken by Facebook, as well as Instagram through Mark Zuckerberg, and now Twitter as well, whether it does fly in the face of that freedom of expression.
But our freedoms don't come with limitations, right? They don't just, you can't just tweet whatever false information that can cause harm to people, or Facebook it if it can cause harm to people, especially if it's unverified information. Some people might say that, but these tech giants might say, well, we realized that in the past people have told us that it did cause harm. So these new mechanisms of checking these things and helping us to find balance are going to control that and make sure that our audiences, our users get information that has been checked properly, information that has been verified and that is legitimate and correct.
Okay, and then let's move over to this one. WhatsApp has caused some controversy. What's happening with our privacy policy settings?
When it comes to WhatsApp, when WhatsApp started, we knew that it was a safe platform that could not be infiltrated with information that could not be shared with third parties. But new privacy policies, we do know that now it's owned by Facebook. They bought it a couple of years ago, and they've said now that information on WhatsApp data will now be shared with Facebook and other platforms that are owned by Facebook. We know that they own Instagram as well. This could be information about where you are, your location. Information can be shared across if you use any of those platforms to buy goods online, for example. So that privacy that we thought we had on WhatsApp when we were having conversations in the past seems to go away. And they've said that if you don't agree with that, you could be kicked off the platform completely and not have the ability to use WhatsApp. And we do know that a lot of people rely on WhatsApp to share information and to have conversations.
But what do we make of all of this mining of all of this data? Because some people may just say that this is just data, but this is not just data. This is valuable information that is being shared shared with Facebook and its other partners. And through, speaking about, for instance, the Donald Trump election, we know what Facebook is capable of doing with data.
It does become a dangerous territory, doesn't it? Because we do know that in the past, as you've rightfully mentioned with what happened with Cambridge Analytica, that if data ends up in the wrong hands, the consequences could be huge. And these could be consequences with our lives, with our safety, with our privacy, with our security. And yes, social media networks like Facebook can say that, well, we've learned from our past mistakes and we can keep it private now. But the thing is, if you've signed up to WhatsApp, you've signed up to have conversations with your family and friends. You did not sign up to information being shared publicly on a more public platform like Facebook, or as it has always been a more public platform than WhatsApp. A thing about sometimes as a journalist, for example, the sources that you deal with, that you have conversations with, using platforms that in the past you were told were encrypted, like Facebook. Suddenly, like WhatsApp rather, suddenly that information can be shared across Facebook platforms. Suddenly it can be shared with Facebook. Suddenly it can be shared perhaps with Instagram as well. And you find that those conversations that need to be kept private because of the delicate nature, someone can mine that data and can use it for whatever other reason that they can use it for.
Yeah. Does this mean the rise of Telegram or any other platforms that have the encrypted safety security measures like Telegram?
It's interesting that you speak of Telegram, but at the same time, we also do know that these are all third-party apps that are outside of ourselves, right? That don't belong to us. And they can always, as Facebook is doing now, tweak and change the rules as they wish. Because in the past, remember in the last year, for example, they've had issues with, for example, TikTok. And they've said that information on TikTok is not safe. Data could be mined by the Chinese government. And now you are looking at an American company saying that, well, we can share data across our platforms. Yes, temporarily, you might say that there could be a rise of other platforms like Telegram, for example, but because they are owned by individuals, and at the same time, they also need to abide by laws that are made up by lawmakers or that are created by lawmakers in certain regions of the world. All of this can be tweaked and changed as you go along. And
okay. I think we got the gist of the point. Appreciated that from Siphumelele Zondi.